So today I'm speaking with Angie McMurray. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be talking with her. Angie is a creator, a maker, an environmentalist, and an educator. She certainly taught me a lot on our many enjoyable walks together. Thank you so much, Angie, for sharing your time and speaking with me. So, how do you describe your work and your process?
Well, thanks for having me. um, well, I don't sort of separate creativity as like one aspect of my life. It's like when I think of being creative, I think I cast a wide net to include everything about my life and everything it means to be, engaged in that life, um, and what I choose to pay attention to. So I don't articulate a specific creative process, um, because I don't see it as separate from my life. I can't remember a time ever when I wasn't creative. I mean, I just think I had these eyes that looked out on the world and just always felt this sense of possibility and saw just beauty and excitement. I just always felt excitement about creation and just the incredible power of the universe. And as a result of that, because it's so personal and that I get my cues more internally than from the external world, it just required a willingness to be awkward
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't governed by, you know, the approval of the external world, whether it be teachers or parents. I mean, I always felt like I was in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of my way of seeing the world and my sense of, righteous indignation about it wasn't not always welcome, right?
Yeah. What sort of things made you feel those emotions, like righteous indignation,
I,
for example?
I, well, I think I had such a profound sense of the rightness of the way that people should be.
Yeah.
So if I saw, like, I, for example, had an angry father, and I was, always in the middle of trying to make him see the injustice of his vision of the world. I mean, he was very socially active, but interpersonally, there was a lot of violence. So being creative and being violent are just completely antithetical. So, um, I don't know where it comes from. It's just who I am. And it just manifested. There's no lack of opportunity of things to be indignant about. For me, creativity was a process of discernment. Like, what am I going to choose to spend my energy on? What am I going to choose to pay attention to? In spite of all of these things that are attempting to extort your attention, and usually in a negative or less useful way for the world.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being kind of a goal setter type of person, although I've achieved a lot in my life, part of my creativity was really not so much about setting goals. If you're just being who you are moment by moment, it doesn't have this agenda associated with it about having to be like a super shiny object, or I don't have to be a certain way, that I just allow the organic process to unfold, and the results of that will be what they be. It's like time. It's moving along, and you're just kind of arriving and showing up for whatever is percolating up. So that discernment I talked about earlier is about what thoughts are worthy of being actioned, and which ones are arising out of our hurts or our trauma or our patterns. Or so we have to be awake. I have to be very self-forgiving and not grandiose.
Yeah.
In order to be engaged in being creative moment by moment. In terms of the fruit that's born from that, in terms of if I'm being creative, whatever I make, I mean, some of my creativity doesn't make anything in the sense that I'm playing music and lost in the moment, never to be heard or seen by anyone. Or I'll make something, and so that's the fruit, you know. But I'm not attached to that whatsoever, um, because it's like I forget what musician I was listening to one day. It's probably Kenny Werner, who's a jazz pianist, and he wrote a book called Effortless Mastery, which really confronts all of the stuff that's in our way of mastering an instrument. But it's applicable to anything in life. Like it's so much wisdom dripping from it. And he taught at Berkeley, and he was talking about this idea of, the ego gets in the way. We want to make great music. We want to impress our audience. We want to be like thought of this as this amazing master musician. And what he got people to do is, like, say they were a guitar player or a pianist, is go sit at a drum kit, and people would just blam away because they didn't think of themselves as drummers.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So those limitations just didn't exist, so they weren't attached to what they were doing. So I think there's a lot of wisdom to that, to not sort of categorize yourself as this, that, or the other thing. And because as soon as you do that, then there's an inevitable set of expectations attached to that.
The interconnectedness of all life is the basis of treating all things with respect. How does this relate to you, your life, and your work?
Okay, so interconnectedness, it's a really interesting word. And I guess my first response when I hear that is my first way of engaging with that is not to think of it as interconnectedness in an external way. It's more, am I connecting with my essential nature that's underneath all of the noise, the judgments, the cultural expectations, whatever hurts and stuff are there? Because if you can do that, like have that interconnectedness with your own truth, and that sounds so glib, and I don't mean it that way, but there's a lot of barriers to hearing that voice. So if we can successfully connect with our true nature, then we can't help but be enormously useful, because we'll know ourselves. So it's getting quiet enough again to allow the spaciousness for something to manifest. And in terms of respect for life, I mean, it's an inevitable byproduct of getting sufficiently quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's what causes lack of respect, what causes violence, what causes people to, all the manifestations of our hurts that are happening in the world is that agitation and that lack of ability to connect. Acting on the impulses of our feelings, for example. So just the act of engaging with our creativity is an act of respect. As long as you're getting past all of the traumas and the hurts and the cultural expectations and you should be doing this by this age and all of that nonsense, right? So respect for life means disabling the compulsion to judge and for us to meet reality on its own terms. It is what it is. We wish it were otherwise. How do we make that happen?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do that by making a lot of noise and disrespecting other people and calling them stupid or whatever we feel compelled to do. So that's being smitten with reality exactly as it is, in this, which is just a manifestation of the power of creation. All of the mess is included. We fantasize about a perfect world. It's perfect as it is. We're hurt people, and we manifest that in so many ways. So it's to say yes to it all. That's part of the creative spirit, right? To not compartmentalize. So, and to kind of suspend the tyranny of the should.
Mm.
You know, whether that's I should be, oh, my dad really wanted me to be an accountant. You know, how do you reconcile that? And still love and respect why that, you know, the reasons behind that deep desire of his. You know, that's just still creation. And to be undefended, you know, to be respectful of others, and knowing that their desires for us underneath the gunk are valid and only, I don't know, arise from love, maybe.
Yeah.
It's so easy not to believe that. So my creativity includes everything. So my work, my relationships, I'm talking about interconnectedness. My work, I ran a business for 40 years.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, okay, and I think that I'm retired now for 3 years, and part of what's been a struggle about retirement was my work was like so creative, and was I felt like such a powerhouse doing what I was doing, and it was so like I just completely created it out of nothing and ran it and made lots of really positive relationships, and I'll tell you in a sec what that business was, but it was hard to give it up because all of a sudden all of that life force and that incredible power and creativity, which I'd been pouring into that for decades, was now available. And it was like, oh my God, now what do I do with this, right?
Yeah.
So what I did was in the 70s, I started working on, I should do the Reader's Digest version of this because I could go on forever, but I started working on one of the first recycling programs in Canada. Before blue box programs, you know, well before the environmental movement sort of began in earnest. And that's how I started, and then I came back to Toronto, went back to school, this was in BC, and I worked as an environmental consultant. I worked mostly in waste management, and I think because in my early, late teens and early 20s, I was a real activist in terms of getting involved in all kinds of different environmental movements. I witnessed and saw a lot of ineffectiveness, if I can be generous, a lot of people sort of acting out and not being very effective, and not being very conscious in the way that they were approaching their activism. So I decided that I didn't want to work in the government. I didn't want to work for a nonprofit. So I developed a business where I worked in the corporate world, but as an independent, where I came in and basically taught, you know, property owners and big businesses, brand owners, government departments, and so on, how to, well, one of the things was manage waste and how to creatively engage. Like, people think of these environmental things in isolation, but it went from what they purchase, how they have a relationship to their supply chain, how they manage the products and services they buy once they're in their own premises, how they relate to their contractors, how they heat and light and their buildings, how they relate to their workers. Like, it was so all encompassing. So I saw my role as kind of being engaging with all of those moving parts and empowering people to see that our decisions have wide-ranging consequences, and that we get to see this as a wild and interesting experiment in being human. Like, bring meaning to work. People think work is drudgery. Work is, oh, you know, I can't wait for the weekend. You can go to work every day and have freedom by not buying those myths, like being creative and engaging with people and pulling people in, and being this kind of visionary, but doing it in a way that people can hear it, like using language that resonates for people, not like coming in like some big shot, like I'm imposing my virtue on the world. So that's what I did. I mean, and I did it for 40 years, and I developed the whole business, which is now manifested and engaged in the way corporations run a lot of their relationship to their suppliers, the way they manage their waste, the way their light, their buildings, all of that kind of stuff. So it was good work, and it was a lot of fun, and I love people, and I love communication. So to me, that was like every day, it was like a manifestation of my creativity. Because there were a lot of people that didn't want to have to do this. You're basically shepherding people through programs they don't want to do. They think they're stupid. They are the good old days when we could just throw everything into a big hole, and look at all these stupid bins we have to have, and all this kind of stuff. So how do you like engage, meet people where they're at, but empower them? Like, okay, we got to do this. Yep, that, you know, all of those feelings are there, but how do we feel excited about the things that we inevitably have to face, right?
Yeah, it's huge. What you've done is absolutely incredible.
Well, it was fun. So when I retired, it was like, wow, now what? So my relationships, the way I parented, I have a 40-year-old son, so the way I parented, I was very conscious in the way that I created that. It was, you know, and that's a huge challenge for people, because especially these days where everybody's got their ideas of what you should be doing, and it's all very transactional, you know, what you're trying to create, this little self-actualized human that's going to go out and be, you know, this kind of stuff. It's like, it's so disempowering. The spaces I create in my life, you know, are part of it. There's nothing I do that I don't approach from a foundation of creativity. And then there's no urgency to get life over with then. There's no like, oh, gotta get to the weekend, or oh, I can't wait till I retire, or oh, that 3 weeks holidays that's coming up, where we're always like, you know, everything is future bound.
Yeah.
Instead of just being steeped in the amazing power of just being alive right now. If you can harness that, again, that just tickled to be here kind of approach, then everything's creative. So that respect for life is like, how can I be the author of my own ambitions, instead of having them be what your parents, the culture, LinkedIn, Instagram, you know, there's no lack of people telling you who and what you should be. And of course that's very operationalized. There's lots of products associated with that. So to stop operationalizing everything and honor the process of being alive and engage with everything without this kind of grim determination, you know, just chill. To de-accelerate is just a creative act, you know? And I think if you can do that, and I mean, that's difficult for me because I'm wound up, right? I've got so much like, my nervous system is just percolating with all this magnificent power all the time. And I've spent my life trying to manage that, to, you know, de-accelerate it. And that's a creative act, and that changes the world because it gives other people permission to see that it's possible.
Yeah. It's beautiful. So tell me more about how you respond to difficult issues in the world and in your life through your creative process.
Well, I grew up in a difficult family, creative people, but a lot of difficulties. And remember, I said at the beginning, like I had these particular eyes that I was seeing through. It's kind of hard to describe. But I think that what I realized, or what I chose to believe early on and has governed my life, is that people are always doing their best. And it doesn't look that way. I mean, it always looks like, like we have lots of advice, right? I just want to give everyone a little sermonette like every day. But if you remember that if somebody's acting badly, this isn't an excuse or anything. It's just that people act out of their hurts. And if they had more support, more information, a different childhood, different parents, they'd be different. And on a moment it's like when you look back at some things you did when you were younger and you're like, oh God, I felt like I knew what I was doing. And now through experience and, awareness and just the waking up process of being alive, you go, wow, what a bonehead I was, You only can do what you can do in the moment, right? We're evolving slowly, and we have to, the place to live a better life is at home. This is what I believe. So I don't believe in us and them. I think it's all we, and all the disturbance in the world are manifestations of people's hurts and traumas, and they're being projected, right? So we have to take on our own lack of awareness. And how do I, while I'm ranting and raving about what's going on in politics, which is so seductive, I could spend a lot of time on that, is to step back and go, in what way in my life, in my own life, in my own judgments, whatever I do, am being a less effective helper or a less effective person for others? How am I contributing to that violence? You're not going to change that until this changes, I think. It's like a consciousness thing. So I think a lot of our suffering is a resistance to reality. Like, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. We're up for it.
Yeah.
We can rise to it, but it doesn't have to be done from this place of, resignation and anger and, because all of that simply keeps the status quo in place, because then we've completely lost our chi, we've lost our life force, and it's just being sucked dry by this stuff, right? So keep aggression out of the to-do list. And, while we're sitting around ranting and raving about how aggressive they are, what are we doing? So I think that's important because that's extorting our creativity. And so I think you have to create a respite from that in your own life. And it's not about, it's tricky because you don't want to say, well, I'm just going to put my head in the sand and I can't do anything about it. There's so much you can do. But it's in your own life. The people that you affect, and then they affect, and they affect. That's where real change comes.
And my last question for you is, Angie, how do you feel creativity can change the world?
Well, I'll tell you, it's the only thing that ever does. But I'll tell you an experience from my own life. So my son, when he was in grade 7, he was in this gifted program at school. So a lot of the kids were amazing musicians. So when he was in grade 7, the teacher, it was in downtown Ottawa, and the teacher put out to the parents a request to have some chaperones walk the kids to the main branch of the Ottawa Public Library one day. There was some event going on and needed just people to walk with them as they walked downtown. So it was up Bank Street or whatever. So I volunteered for that. And when we were coming back, I was walking with this little group of young girls, grade 7 girls, and they all started singing. Amazing harmonies. And they were just like, and I'm like completely gobsmacked how good they were, right? I've always been a singer. I've always loved to harmonize and sing. So I'm like, oh my God, you guys are amazing. And they sang the whole way back. And I said, like, I was just like amazed how good they were. They all played instruments. And so I said, wow, I would love to sing too. Do you guys want to do something together? They went, yeah, can we start today? Like, they were all excited, which is, it was so antithetical to all these messages we get about like teenage girls, right? Like how they're going to like reject wanting to hang around with someone like me. So they were just super keen, right? Yeah, let's sing together. So I went to the school and I went to the principal and I said, can I, like, I told her what had happened, said, we want to get together and sing. So how about if we use one of the classrooms at lunchtime? You know, it's not going to interfere with anything they're doing, or, you know, it's in their own time, and we'll just give me a key to one of the classrooms and we'll go in and we'll sing. And oh well, they, you know, it was all of this like, why would you want to do that? And then they wanted me to start a choir, and I said, I have no ability to start a choir. They don't need more instruction, and if they did, it sure wouldn't be for me. They're better than I am, you know. And I just want to be with them while they sing, and I beam approval at them, you know? And so, I mean, I had to, like, they wanted me to start a choir and all this stuff about liability, but, you know, so I had to jump through all these hoops. So they finally, like, sort of begrudgingly agreed to give me the key. So was the start of something amazing. So we got the key, we started, and I think, I mean, this is many years ago now, because all those kids are like 40 years old now. I didn't run anything. They picked the songs they wanted to sing. They worked out the harmonies. There was a core group of about 12 kids, and then there'd be a bunch of rubberneckers on the outside looking in, but didn't really want to come in, but were very curious about what was going on. So we met once a week. I think it was once a week. It might have been more often, but they loved it. And they just made all these beautiful songs. I didn't teach them anything. I was just there to, like I said, beam approval at them and contradict all the messages they get about, raging hormones and disapproving about their clothes and what matters to them. There was none of that. It was like, you guys rock. This is awesome. This is so much fun. Like, you are amazing. So we did that, and then there was a school strike. So they ended up all coming to my house, right? So they'd come to my house every Friday. We'd sing for, maybe an hour and a half. Then we had this amazing basement. They'd all head to the basement. We'd order pizza. They'd hang out. It was an amazing thing. We did it for the entire year. And the parents would come to pick the kids up, and they'd be like really suspicious. Like, what is really going on here? Why would you want to hang around with a bunch of teenagers? You know, it's like, you would not believe the gifts that I get from these kids. And you know what? They'd be downstairs. Like, after we'd sung, they'd go downstairs, have pizza, be together. I'd leave them to it. And like, one or two of them would come up and they would start telling me what was going on for them, maybe with their parents or a girl they liked or something, and sit and cry with me, you know. It was so amazing, you know, how to get a glimpse, you know, into the world of these precious little creatives, you know, and to provide a safe space, you know. So the parents would come to pick them up and be like, you know, really like sort of begrudging and, you know, like really kind of about it, right? So what we decided to do, because none of the parents were engaged in any of this, so at the end of the year, we thought, let's put on a little concert for the parents, right? And one of the kids lived out in the suburbs, so they had a big house. So we arranged it for there, and the kids decided what songs they wanted to do. And they also played instruments. One played violin, the other keyboards. One of the kids played harp, who's now professional uh, symphony orchestra musician. Like, these kids were amazing. So we planned the whole program in the little sunken living room with the kitchen above it, like a mezzanine, right? With the parents all stood up there. And I have a videotape of it. And the kids did all these songs, and oh God, it was just amazing. And the parents were just blown away.
Oh.
Because here they were witnessing their kids just shining.
Yeah.
This is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
All the times you came to pick them up and being snarky. This is what we were doing, you know? So we did the concert. The parents were like in tears and singing along. And so at the end of it, you know, you can hear everybody whooping it up, and it was just so life affirming. And at the end of it, people started busting out guitars, and none of these parents had met each other before.
Oh.
And after that night, they all became friends. There was Halloween parties, and like, I'm still friends. I'm still friends with the kids. You know, one of the guys, he's a musician. He lives in London, England. He's married over there. Whenever he comes back, he comes here and brings his wife. The younger brother of Peter lives in Montreal. Last weekend, he was in Clayton because he knows someone there. We get together. I'm still friends with Amelia, Robin. I get letters from them. They have their own children now, you know? And that's what changes the world. I mean, it changed my world.
Yeah.
And their world, because I still hear from them, like, how much it meant to them. You know, like, two of the boys, like, their mother ended up committing suicide, and they talk to me about how much solace they get from those memories, because it was at their house when their mother was still alive. You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why you just have to show up with the gifts that you have to offer, however modest they are. You know? It doesn't have to be, in fact, on the contrary, let it be as modest as it is. The world is so hungry for it, you know? So when I think about, the reason I get so choked up about it is because I know that mattered, you know? And all the mistakes that we make in our lives and the things that go wrong, you know, they're tolerable because of things like that. Because you know that those kids are out mentoring that for others too, just like somebody believed in them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's creativity is just, you know, grab a hold of your gifts and share them. It's so nourishing.